regarding George Floyd's murder. Crimes committed by those in authority are far worse than those committed by regular citizens, and they need to be punished even more so because they destroy the community's trust in law enforcement, the judicial system, and overall fairness in how people see things, which creates chaos in the world in our communities. And then the minimization of the situation and the severity is a big deal as well. Oh, black on black crime is more dangerous to black people. Don't say Black Lives Matter, because all lives matter. Yeah, all lives do matter, but we're talking about the black ones right now. Because black people have been the subject of police brutality for centuries, not just decades, not just recently, because there hasn't been an uptick in racism. There's not been an uptick in police brutality. These things are just caught on film now. We saw back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, people getting water hosed down, beat up, just peacefully protesting. And people are mistaking when they don't understand the lack of respect and humanity shown to black people regularly that does not result in death. I mean, because they say, oh, just cooperate. But we see people who aren't cooperating that have a different paint job that get treated differently, don't get shot, don't get dead, any of that. And these people who are in positions of power have to be held accountable and to a higher standard. That's why they need to be charged with murder than even regular citizens, because they have a responsibility to protect and serve. Law enforcement, judges, and anyone in a position of authority. It's like the few bad apples theory. You ruin the whole bunch, or at least make the bunch look rotten. They make it harder for good officers to do their job. But it was at least a little bit comforting to see the other 3 officers in George Floyd's murder held accountable for not intervening. Because you are not a good officer if you allow a bad officer to violate people's civil and human rights. We need more laws like what's going on in Minnesota with that, because the law enforcement judges taking money from private prisons have to be held to a higher standard because they have that responsibility. Oh, George, you sound like you have a victim mentality. No. Acknowledging a problem doesn't condemn you to victimhood. Because black people realize, oh, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But the fact is, it takes more than 50 years to fix what was broken over 350 years while you're fighting uphill. Look at sports. Black quarterbacks just started getting equal opportunity within the last 15 years. And we're 70% of the players. The 13th Amendment in 1865 was supposedly ending slavery. It didn't immediately end slavery. And it didn't allow black people equality. Because there's a huge difference between the laws on paper, in bylaws, and in City Hall, than the laws that we live in a normal basis, and the social norms and what is okay. The laws that we live by that aren't on paper. Because if the equality was true, there would have been no need for the Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 that allowed schools to be integrated. But that didn't magically fix everything, because it took till the late 80s for schools to be fully integrated. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, that didn't do everything either. Because none of these things, none of these laws can change what's in people's hearts and how they feel about somebody of another race. It didn't stop redlining and the refusal to give people loans for businesses or homes, particularly in certain neighborhoods. Because real estate creates wealth. Wealth creates power. And this is not all white people. But these are a lot of the people that were desensitized by seeing black people hosed down in the streets when they were kids, spit on, called niggers, lynched, abused by the police. Those people are alive now. And they were desensitized by it. But what do they need to do? They need to speak up and be part of the solution. So how can you help? When you see something, say something. Call it out. publicly, not just privately. Demand justice, the same as you would want and expect for your son and for your daughter, for your neighbor, your friend. And white people, understand this. You do not need to have white guilt about what happened in the past that your parents, grandparents, generations beyond that did, especially when you believe what they did was wrong. Your guilt should be surrounded by standing idly by and allowing wrongdoing to continue, not speaking up, because your silence is being complicit. So I know everybody wants everybody to stick to sports, stick to all the happy stuff, but you can't just stick to sports when you have a responsibility. I have a responsibility as more than an athlete to help others, help myself, help my community, and all of that.